And welcome back to Two Guys on Politics. This is season 2. It is Thursday, July 27th, 2023, and I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski.
And we're Two Guys on Politics. We got a good, interesting show, Bill. If we get this everything together, we got 3 topics, I think, right? The first is what's the difference between Senator Mitch McConnell and President Joe Biden, right? The second will be an update on the Ukraine war. And then the last will be, are there serious alternatives to President Biden, Manchin or RFK Jr.? Did you see the stories about Mitch McConnell that were being broadcast this week?
Yes, I did.
Did you? I got the feeling that the media is a little biased. They made such a big deal about Mitch McConnell's gaffes, freezing up for a few seconds after he had an accident, right? And it seems like they take, it's like a hypocrisy to me because they take Joe Biden's gaffes like, oh, don't worry, he's old, leave him alone. But when it's Mitch McConnell, they're going, oh, can he remain, in office? It's like a whole different set of questions. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's the liberal news media and their usual attitude towards liberals, progressives, and conservatives. Joe Biden is a liberal progressive, and Mitch McConnell is a conservative. So any kind of problem that he might have mentally or physically is going to be greatly exaggerated by the liberal progressive news media, whether it's TV, radio, newspapers, or magazines. He seemed to recover very quickly from what happened. At first, I had seen it live, and at first I really thought the screen just froze until one of the senators, who also happens to be a doctor, started talking to him and asking him, are you all right? Do you want to go back to your office? But he did come out of it. I understand it was about 20 seconds that he was sort of frozen there. He went back to his office, and then he came back out again and continued the
press conference.
Yeah, the press conference.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, to me, the issue isn't old age. I mean, we know a lot of our politicians are old. You and I are old, but 70 is the new 50, Bill. 80 is the new 60. It's just a different way of life. We're healthier. And we've watched over the last 2 years, President Joe Biden go from one gaffe to another gaffe. He would mix up people's names. He'd mix up countries. And when he would read the teleprompter, he'd read the instructions as part of what he was reading. And it says, make sure to repeat this a second time. And he would read that in giving his speech. Now, I'm not saying that disqualifies.
I ever heard that, Ray, but
okay. Yeah, no, it has. There's a whole list. There's a whole, but see, the fact that you haven't heard it suggests, in my mind, that the media is downplaying it, saying, hey, what does that have to do with anything? Older people make, mistakes like that, minor mistakes.
I can't believe he did that. I read the New York Times every day, and I'm sure they would have put it in there.
I'm telling you, he read the, if I could find, I'll find it for you and I can read it. His biggest gaps. It's, they told him he was reading a teleprompter in July about women's reproductive rights and the importance of voting. And he says it's noteworthy that the percentage of women who register to vote and cast the ballot is consistently higher than the percentage of the men who do so. End of quote. Repeat the line. Women are not without electoral and or political. Let me be precise. Not and or political power. Now, set aside the fact that he read that editor's note. End of quote. Repeat the line. I don't understand what he's talking about. Now, we could make an issue about him, right?
Well, listen, Ray, wait a second, Ray. At least you have to give him that he can read pretty well, right?
That's true. he's told what to say, and he follows his instructions pretty well. But to me, the hypocrisy is the issue, not whether Joe Biden makes a gaffe or Mitch McConnell makes a gaffe. When Mitch McConnell has this physical thing after he fell, I think it was about a week ago, he had an injury, and they thought maybe this had to do with the injury. They're already talking about, should he stay in office? Is he competent? It's almost like they have a glee and an excitement about getting back at the Republicans because the Democrats feel the Republicans are making fun of Biden.
Well, I'm sure that the liberal progressive Democrats would just as soon stay if he's going to be incompetent. I'm surprised they're coming after him as much as they are. If I was liberal progressive Democrat, I'd want him to be able to stay and go out there and freeze up a few more times, lose some more credibility.
Well, I would add one word to their title, liberal progressive Democrats. I would say liberal progressive and mean Democrats, because I think when it comes to the Republicans, they're extra mean. When it comes to them, they can find every excuse under the book to explain everything away. So do you think that, when you look at it now, in all seriousness, Senator, as important as Mitch McConnell, has this momentary lapse where he's kind of unsure where he's at, takes him a few minutes, come back. Do you think that undermines his leadership, or is it the criticism from the media that fuels undermining his leadership? Does it bother you that happened to him?
No, it doesn't bother me that it happened to him. The accident he had, though, Ray, was a couple of months ago, where he fell and actually got a slight concussion. So I don't really think the event the other day is related to that whatsoever. Why he froze up, I don't know. But there certainly has been a great deal of criticism of him by the progressive, less left-wing, mean media. No question about that. Okay, I'll remember to include that in the future.
Let's do that, because there's a meanness and a hypocrisy. We could say unfair and double standard. We could add those adjectives to the left-wing progressive Democrats, because I think it is a hypocrisy. They treat one side one way, they treat the other side the other way. And doesn't that distract from our ability to address real issues, the way we do things? We're not really talking about substantive issues right now, between you and I.
Absolutely. You are absolutely correct. Yeah, we're talking about Mitch McConnell freezing up, and we're talking about President Joe the Reader, which we shouldn't be doing. There's so many other issues in this world that really are probably a lot more important. Although Biden is the president of the United States, he should be cooking on all 8 cylinders all the time. And there's no question in my mind that age, is harming him. I know how it is myself. I'm older than Joe. I know I am nowhere near as sharp as long as I need to be during the course of the day any longer. When I get up in the morning, I think clearer. I feel sharper. I feel stronger as the day wears on. Because of my age, I don't have the stamina that I used to have. So I start slowing down during the course of the day. And I am certainly not dealing with all the problems that Joe Biden has to deal with during the course.
You're correct. We're talking about two different people. One is the president of the United States. The other one is the Republican Party minority leader, of the U.S. Senate. Obviously, both are important positions, but I would be more concerned about the person who's the president than I would be about the minority leader, because the minority leader of a party can be easily replaced. A president, I don't know, not so easily replaced. But I think you and I both agree that all this pettiness on the part of the media, in my opinion, distracts us from the real issues and may score points. Maybe it makes the liberal, Democratic, progressive Democrats feel like they're better off, than the conservatives and the Republicans. But I think it actually hurts us, and they don't care. I don't see any of them on their side acknowledging there's a hypocrisy in the way they judge people. And I think it's because they don't care about this country as much as they care about the few items that are the foundation of the far left wing, radicals in this country who want what they want. The United States be damned.
I have to concur with that, Ray. And it is, as I said before, we have a lot of problems in this country. We have to solve those problems. The only way we're going to solve them is if we come together. And the attitude that the Democrats have, and many Republicans also have, they simply want to beat the other side. They don't want to solve problems. They want to beat the other side so they can get in power. Unfortunately, neither one of them seem to do much for the American people when they are in power.
That is a big obstacle. And I remember when Biden got elected, he said, we're going to get past that. We're going to bring everybody together. But I don't know. And, I think it's fair when we criticize governments, not people. I mean, listen, I'm old, you're old, Biden is old. We all have our moments. I'm sure we've all made mistakes. But I don't allow a typo in a column to distract me from the purpose or the focus of a column. When I'm reading your column, my column, someone else's column, if there's a typo in it, I don't say, oh my gosh, look at the typo. Forget about the importance and significance of the column or the topic. Let's focus on whether the word THERE should be THEIR. Now, that to me is what we're doing. And sure, we want to be in an English class. Let's get down to the basics of how to spell and typos. But we're at a time where we are suffering across this world. And it seems like we're focused on some ridiculous distractions for political purposes.
I couldn't agree with you more, my friend. Absolutely correct.
And listen, I want to point out, since it's pretty obvious how white you are and how dark I am, a lot of people say, oh, two guys on politics, those are white conservatives, who don't like the world, and the truth is that conservatives in the middle, the way we are, Reagan Democrats, there's no color to us. We could be
Absolutely.
Hispanic, they're African-American conservatives. So there is this diversity in our beliefs. There are a lot of people, regardless of their skin color or their beliefs or national origin, who I think agree with us. But I don't think the media even recognizes that.
I think that's very true, Ray. And the thing that upsets me the most is that I believe our two parties and the news media want to see us continue to fight amongst ourselves and not really serve the American people. And that's what we should be doing. Not only the politicians serving the American people, but the news media should service the American people. And that's not happening.
Yeah, I whenever I see the word fact check in the media, right away I know it's a political knife that they're going to stab in the back of some Republican or some conservative. And I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm saying that they're only doing it to one side. They're stabbing one side, but they won't stab themselves. They don't hold themselves to the same standard. And that really is the problem, I think, hurting our country. I told you I was just on vacation a few weeks, and I was in Italy and Greece and Croatia. Croatia, by the way, is just a beautiful place compared to Italy and Greece. Greece and Italy, there's some issues there. But the people in Greece were so anti-American. And I was shocked at how often a cab driver would say, oh, are you from America? And I'd say, yeah. And I'm thinking, the old days when they'd say, oh, we wish we want to go to America. Instead, the first thing the cab driver says is, oh, your country is going to be gone in a couple of years. It's changing. The world is changing. And I'm wondering what made him so, gave him the courage or the strength to say that to me. And I have to blame that on Joe Biden, that he's weak. The image is weak, that he doesn't convey a strong image of America. And a weak America invites this kind of criticism that undermines us.
Well, I think it's the news media that focuses on the negative things about America and not the positive things. And that is hurting our image around the world, and it's hurting our leadership around the world. Biden projecting a weak presidency, and the news media continually talking about some of the negative aspects of the United States of America, rather than emphasizing the positive things that we have done, not only for ourselves, but for the rest of the world.
And the bottom line then on senior gaffes is it hasn't undermined our faith in terms of McConnell or Biden. I mean, seniors are going to have those errors and gaffes, and that's just the way it is until young people decide to care about America as much as the older people and start voting at the length and numbers and percentages that seniors vote. Seniors are our most aggressive and consistent voters. And honestly, I prefer to give them a pass. And I'm going to brush aside criticism from young people that say we're too old. Let them stand up, let them take responsibility. And when they do that, I'm going to give them the respect that they insist that we give them.
Very good.
All right. And then now our next topics, real quick on the Ukraine war. Has anything changed, do you think, Bill?
Unfortunately, no, I don't think anything has changed. I think that this war is going to go on longer and longer and longer. I really think the longer it goes on, the greater chance there is for the Russians to win, because the Russians are a much larger country. I think that their goals are fairly well established. What they want to do, they want to take over all of the Ukraine. The Ukrainians want to drive the Russians out of much territory as they possibly can do. But this counteroffensive that they are operating right now doesn't seem to be gaining an awful lot of ground. And I blame, the Americans, the Poles, the British, who are the three greatest helpers to the Ukrainians, not supplying more weapons and not convincing other European nations really to get on board totally and completely. Every European nation says that they support the Ukraine, but you check and you see how much they are really contributing to the defense of the Ukraine. And more, the longer the war goes on, the more and more people I see in this country, talking about how long is this going to go on? How much more can we give them? We're leaving ourselves be unprotected. That's very dangerous, because if we were to stop helping the Ukrainians, I am afraid that the Russians would roll through that country the way they originally thought they would. The Ukrainians have great courage. They put up a great fight, but they don't have the materials that they need yet. And that's another point. Why haven't the United States and other nations delivered many of the weapons that that the Ukrainians could use in this war? F-16 fighter planes, they still don't have them. Those are really a great necessity, but unfortunately, we haven't supplied them, and we have stopped other countries from supplying them. We keep saying we're going to do so, but we haven't. So this war is really very upsetting to me, because I just do not see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that we can blame ourselves and our so-called allies for not giving the Ukrainians all the weapons that they need.
I agree with much of what you said. And I think Russia's strategy has changed from we're going to win this war in 3 days and occupy all of Ukraine, down to the longer we keep this war going, the better our odds, because Russia can't win this war on the battlefield. What they can do is win it by continuing this conflict longer and longer, believing that the United States is not willing to do what needs to be done. When you deal with the bully, the best way to deal with the bully is to stand up to that bully and make it clear that if I have to cross that line and beat you over the head, I'm going to do it. But we're not doing that. What we're saying is, to that bully, quit calling us names. we're going to not let you buy the good food anymore. We're not going to let you buy this. And the bully isn't being intimidated. If you want to beat the bully, you got to out-bully the bully. And we're not prepared to do that. We should be going to Russia and saying, we're going to give you until the end of the week. And if you don't withdraw from Ukraine, we're going to allow the Ukrainians, we're going to give them the artillery and the manpower to invade Russia. Because so far, the Russian cost has not been as great as it has been on the Ukrainians. And the Russian, Putin doesn't care about his people, but he knows that if the Ukrainian war were to spill over into Russia, that would be a game changer for him. And he can rattle his nuclear weapon sword all he wants. I don't believe he would do that. We would incinerate him before he would incinerate us. And I think he knows that. But he knows also that we don't have the courage to be the strong voice that we used to be, not just 5 years ago, but over the last 40 years. And until we get back to that position of strength, we're going to be dragged through this conflict for the next, I agree with you, sadly, 6 months, 8 months, another year, maybe 2 years. And I don't know what's going to change.
Ray, how can you win a war when your enemy is allowed to bomb you on your home territory, but you are not allowed to attack them in their home territory? And and I know, we're stopping them from doing it. The other European countries are stopping the Ukraine from doing it because they don't want to widen this war. But that's been their excuse right from the beginning. They didn't want to give this to the Ukrainians because it might widen the war. We don't want to give this to the Ukrainians. It's going on and on.
Yeah, that shows that we have a fear. We don't want them to widen the war. We don't want them to invade Russia because we have a fear. And I think the Russians are, Putin's not stupid. He's a smart person. My only hope is that somebody in Russia will realize that the cost to the Russians, which has been downplayed, the loss of life, the loss of benefits to the average Russian person, at some point, I'm hoping they take Putin out and we get somebody reasonable in to negotiate this in a fair way back to where it should have been over a year and a half ago. But you're absolutely right. If you punch me and I don't punch you back, what kind of fight is that? Eventually, I'm going to get beat. So we have to punch them back.
Yep, I agree.
We started talking about President Biden and the Democratic Party. I know there's talk about Joe Manchin, the U.S. Senator, and also Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I tend to like both of them, Manchin and RFK. I don't agree with everything that they stand for, but there's no politician I agree 100% with. So if they come close to 80% that I can agree with, I think that they're better than what we have right now. So I like RFK and I like Joe Manchin. What do you think is going to happen with those two candidates? Can they actually bring about change in the Democratic Party and still defeat a guy like Trump?
Well, I don't think that Joe Manchin can do that. And I seriously, although I like Joe Manchin very much, I hope he becomes the presidential candidate of the No Labels Party. If they ever really get around to putting, their party on the ballot in all 50 states, I'm not very happy with them at the present time because I think the way they're going about establishing their party, getting their candidate is much, much too slow. But that's a topic for another program. As far as Robert Kennedy Jr., I've heard him talk several different times. I have to tell you, there are many things that he says that I do not agree with at all. I mean, one of them is that we, the United States of America, push the Russians into invading Ukraine. Now, I cannot agree with that at all. I think that's a terrible mistake. There are other things that he has said that I definitely don't agree with. But I will tell you this about him. He seems to know what he is talking about. He doesn't just make wild charges. He gives you a lot of details in regards to us forcing the Russians to invade Ukraine. he brings up the fact that we promised the Russians that we would not expand NATO as close to Russia as we did. He brings up the fact that when the Soviet Union fell, we said that we would help, bring democracy to Russia. We said that we would, invest in Russia. Many of those things never happened. Some of them that did happen happened in a very, very minor way. Now, I don't think that justifies the Russians, being forced to invade the Ukraine. But I mean, he's got a lot of facts and figures on his side. You may be a little bit more enamored with RFK, okay, than I am. But I'm glad to see that he's in there because he's bringing up a number of things that I believe should be discussed. Now, he has also said that his uncle and his father, they were both killed by communists. Well, I haven't seen any evidence of that over the course of all these years. He also seems to think that there is some legitimacy to the UFOs. To me, if there are UFOs, we've known it since 1946. Okay, if they were going to hurt us, I think they would have done something to us. So I don't think that that's a real significant issue. But I'd like to hear what you have to say about RFK.
Well, what's interesting to me is how the media turns to those little things like the UFO thing and makes it into a much bigger issue than anybody's ever. It's even worth. It's honestly not worth the big discussion that's being shoved on us by the media to discredit RFK. As far as the communists killing John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy, I think that there was some kind of uncoordinated conspiracy of people that hated them, and nobody stopped that hatred from killing them because the FBI director, J. Edgar Hoover, hated the Kennedys. I don't think he did a good enough job to protect the president or the candidate, Robert F. Kennedy. I think the mob had a good reason to want him out. Now, does that mean that one group did it? I don't think so. But when everything comes together, LBJ hated the Kennedys. LBJ was embarrassed. He felt that he was being embarrassed every day by JFK. And he was a smart guy. And they knew that JFK was going to try to take the U.S. out of Vietnam, or at least they feared that. I don't think he would have. But I think all those factors come together and everybody did less than what they should have done, making it easy for somebody to step in and take them both out. And I do believe that the government has hid all that and has, even till today, there are thousands of documents we can't get a chance to read. Why? After how many years now? What, 60 years, right? Because I was 10 years old at the time. 60 years. But the point is that after 60 years, we're not allowed to see all of the documents from this investigation. What? Why? Because they're hiding something?
I don't know what justification can they give that we American citizens cannot see all these documents from something that happened years and years and years ago. I mean, we have a perfect right to see these things. We're mature enough to handle it. It's so long ago now, frankly, it's not going to make much difference as far as the communists go,
right.
As far as the mafia goes, because I don't think either one of those entities have the significance today that they had back in the 1960s, okay? So let us see what else there is to see. Let's put it to bed once and for all.
And personally, if RFK Jr. becomes the president, I don't think he's going to be any worse than Biden. I don't think he's going to be any worse than Trump. I don't fully agree with some of his views on, the Ukraine war. But I think that one thing he definitely will do is get to the bottom of what happened with JFK and RFK. And I'll tell you what, if we can't resolve those issues, that tells me there is some type of deep state in which they control things in this country and they don't want the rest of us to see it. And if they can do that, they can do almost anything. And I blame a lot of our problems on too much influence on the staff that runs the White House and the State Department, not on the people that hold the office that we think we elect to make the decisions. They don't make all the decisions.
I certainly agree with that. So the bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. is a government all unto itself. And it is wrong. But unfortunately, the people we have in Washington at the present time and have had for years doesn't seem to care to do anything about it. We have to stop depending upon our staff in Washington to the degree that we do. They're not elected, as you said. It has to be decisions made by the elected people, not by the bureaucrats.
It's fun to get back into this. We're going to be doing this every week again. Two Guys on Politics for our second season. And hopefully you'll hear us every weekend coming up.
Until next time, Bill Lipinski, a fellow American.
And Ray Hanania, co-host with the former congressman and former Chicago alderman. We will see everybody next week, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. We're interested in any comments or any thoughts or any ideas for shows or topics. You email us, both of us. Our emails will be on the podcast, so you can easily get a hold of us and share what you think. We'll see you next week. Everybody have a great day. Bye-bye.